What you're about to see is a real-life story, taken from the files of the police racket and bunco squads, business protective associations, and similar sources all over the country. It is intended to expose the confidence game, the carefully worked-out frauds by which confidence men take more money each year from the American public than all the bank robbers and thugs with their violence.
Hello, my name is Molly Olson, and I'm the volunteer director and co-founder of CPR, the Center for Parental Responsibility. CPR was formed to meet the need for information and collaboration among non-custodial parents who have decided to change our current family law system for the benefit of children. The problem we face is simple. It is family court orders excommunicating fit parents from their children 24 days of the month and then enforcing those orders with the police power of the state. For most parents, this is heartbreaking, and for me, it's intolerable. CPR exists to remove the obstacles that prevent both parents from being fully and equally involved in the lives of their children. CPR is a 100% volunteer organization. We need you to contribute your time and talent to further our efforts. We are bringing more and more like-minded people together every day, building a critical mass to restore parental rights and ensure children have equal access to both parents. CPR is a faith-based organization founded on Christian principles. We find our guidance from the God of the Bible, though we honor and respect everyone, regardless of religious preference. I urge you to become involved in CPR. Join with other parents who have been through the family court system who are eager to share their experiences. Together, we will be the voice of the people who respect the family and value children. I want to give a very special welcome back to our viewers to CPR TV, a show for the family law reform community. I'm happy to have Stanley join me again today, my co-host in the studio.
It's good to be here, Molly.
Stanley Charles Thorne is an attorney from Texas who is a national expert working for families and children across the country. Stanley, you have a very powerful mission. Explain that to our viewers.
Well, Molly, I've been an attorney for 25 years now, and based on my experience in the family courts the past 5 years, I've seen many abuses in the day-to-day business that the family courts do. It's all over America. And my mission is simple. I believe that if we return the rule of law and respect for the Constitution to family courts where it belongs, then many of the abuses, in fact almost all of the abuses that are part of the day-to-day business of family courts, will become a thing of the past. My mission is simply to have this system changed so that it does not do to my grandchildren what it's already done to my children.
Stanley, let's start working on that mission right now. In this program, we present the first in a series of comments by Dr. Stephen Baskerville. As a political science professor, he is internationally known for his research and insights into the dismal state of family courts in America. Dr. Baskerville's articles and commentary have appeared in many publications, including the Washington Post, the Boston Globe, National Review, and the Journal of Political Science, and many others. He has appeared on numerous national television shows, including Hardball with Chris Matthews, The O'Reilly Factor on Fox News, and Court TV. Dr. Baskerville was interviewed by CPR in Detroit, Michigan at a national family law reform conference. Stanley, you participated in that conference, and I know you appreciate Dr. Baskerville's work.
Molly, Dr. Baskerville is one of many voices who are trying to be heard about the social issues caused by the family courts in America. He is widely recognized and respected. I think the reason he's respected is very simple. He's not only able to take very complex issues and find the core of the problem, but he has a very common sense and sensible approach to the solutions that he presents. I can't wait to hear what he has to say.
Great. Let's view that clip.
In the largest sense, I think the problem is that we have a very fundamental conflict today between the family and the government. It's not new. It's been building for decades, but it is reaching a critical point today. We are seeing it in the controversies over marriage. We're seeing it in controversies over welfare. We're seeing it in the fatherlessness crisis. One area where it has not received publicity, but I think the most serious of all, is in the forced removal of children from their fathers. And this is going on throughout the family courts in the United States and in other democracies. It has reached epidemic and critical proportions. It is the main cause of the fatherlessness crisis in this country, and it has received almost no publicity. It is not in isolation. There is a larger problem of children being taken away from not only fathers, but mothers in some instances, and both parents in intact families. So we have a general problem today where the control over children is shifted from their parents to the government. And I think the most critical and massive manifestation of this is taking place in the family courts through the forced separation of children from their fathers.
You know, Stanley, my heart goes out to children who are robbed of their fathers, who are arbitrarily removed from their lives and arbitrarily labeled non-custodial parents, and then these children are limited in seeing their fathers to every other weekend and Wednesday nights, a very small amount of time. And I think about, as I grew up, my father was my hero, my mentor, my business coach throughout my lifetime, and I connected with my dad on a personality basis, even more than my mother, even though I love my mother equally and learned so much from her as well. There was something about that relationship with my dad that I value so much, and I just think about how I would be a completely different person today if I was not able to see my dad as much as I wanted, if I had been robbed of that time with him. And I just feel so sad for all those children that face that. What are your thoughts?
Well, I can put the size of this problem in some context for you, Molly. America's children deserve better than what they've gotten from America's family courts. America's family courts over the past quarter century have been so efficient that we now have about 30 million children who are with custodial parents, which means that non-custodial parents have been marginalized in their lives. I can't even comprehend 30 million American children who do not have the significant influence of each parent. And unfortunately, about 75 to 80% of non-custodial parents are fathers, which means that, as Dr. Baskerville said, the real big social issue in America today is fatherless children. And they are not fatherless because their fathers don't want to be in their lives. They are fatherless because the courts have taken them out of those children's lives. I cannot agree with Dr. Baskerville more. The most pressing social issue in America today is the forced removal of children from the influence of their fathers.
And Stanley, what puzzles me about this is there's so much talk about all the single moms. It seems like people forget that whenever there's a single mom, there's also a single dad.
Well, that brings me to an important point, Molly, and that is that it's very easy to misunderstand this as a gender issue or as a male versus female issue. This whole thing is not about parent versus parent. It's not about moms against dads or dads against moms. What my mission is all about, and I think it's fair to say the Center for Parental Responsibility is all about, is for each parent to get to continue after divorce or separation to be a meaningful part of each child's life, and that the state has no basis to intrude into that family relationship. It's often misrepresented as a gender issue, but this is all about the awesome power of the state against the individual citizen. That parents as citizens, when they are equal before the law as citizens, and when they're both fit, there is no basis in law for the state or the government to treat them unequally. And I don't want this to be misunderstood as a gender issue. It's about state versus citizen.
With that in mind, Stanley, I think our viewers might be interested in knowing how are citizens protected against these unwarranted state actions and unwarranted government intrusion?
Well, Molly, without having a political science course, which Dr. Baskerville would be better to teach than me, I can tell our viewers that the Constitution was specifically designed by the Founding Fathers to protect citizens from state action or state power. And the kind of state actions we're talking about in family law matters are the most harmful kinds of state actions that government can do against an individual citizen. But there are specific prohibitions in the body of the Constitution itself which protect parents. And in addition, in the Bill of Rights, the constitutional amendments have repeatedly been used to protect parents from state action or governmental power. Those include protections under the 1st, 5th, 6th, 9th, and 14th Amendments. So there is ample protection for individual citizens from state power if our viewers just know how to use the Constitution to protect their family.
So what would be some examples of that and how they can take that into their individual case?
Well, Molly, that question could really be a good show all by itself, but I'll just give you one example. The common sense tells us that there's a zone of privacy around any relationship. Your relationship with your children, my relationship with my children, spousal relationships, all are entitled to privacy. That's just common sense. That comes from what's known as natural law. The Constitution recognizes and is built upon a foundation of natural law, but one of the things that the U.S. Supreme Court has repeatedly recognized is that there's a zone of privacy around family relationships that the Constitution protects, and that the states cannot, without some very good cause, invade that family relationship and do so the way our family courts do every day. So that zone of privacy is something that's not only protected by the Constitution, but there are numerous Supreme Court cases which have held that without clear and convincing evidence of unfitness by a parent, the state cannot invade that parent's parent-child relationship. So that's just one example.
Stanley, we always appreciate your perspective on these very important family law issues. Let's continue our discussion in a moment after these important messages. We have lots more ahead, so please stay tuned.
You're watching CPRTV, a public service of the Center for Parental Responsibility. We'll be right back.
I think death would be easier than a divorce.
It's very frustrating to have gone for help and then come out with your family destroyed.
We have serious problems in our family law court system.
Getting divorced is far from easy.
Litigation lasted for over a year.
I was married only 4 months, and my divorce has lasted over 6.5 years.
Close to 8 years.
8 years.
Why is divorce so difficult?
People can get as much justice as they can afford. Most people cannot afford any justice at all.
What's wrong with that? This is a business.
The more you charge, the more people are willing to pay.
They didn't give me a lawyer. Pay this $11,000 or go to jail. It really got to the end of the line for me.
I said to the litigants, I want you to know, after 2 hours, we will have spent more than most people in this courthouse make in a year.
Your home, your valuables are all going to be sold to pay the lawyers and people like me.
Even though I was acquitted, he still made a decision to take my son away from me. His birthday was last week and I didn't get to see him.
What you have is a tinderbox, and the lawyers are throwing gasoline on that fire.
The system is designed to create conflict.
I received a phone call for another $25,000. He'd be able to give us what we wanted. Extortion?
Family court results in more violence than any other area of law.
Deaths, suicide, murder.
No jury, just the one biased judge.
The judge says, even if you win, you have to pay.
The whole thing is just insane.
Follow the money.
Family courts only grant shared parenting to 20% of divorced or split families.
That means 28 million children are being raised without one of their parents.
If my parents share parenting, I'll have fewer stress-related illnesses.
If my parents share parenting, I'll be less likely to engage in delinquent behavior.
If my parents share parenting,
I'll be more likely to graduate high school and college.
I'll be less likely to abuse drugs, alcohol, and nicotine.
I will be less likely to suffer from depression. I'll be less likely to become pregnant as a teenager.
I'll be less likely to become a teen father.
I'll be more likely to have positive relationships with my grandparents.
If my parents share parenting,
they would be more likely to be in my child's life.
One of the first things you taught me is how to share. Share parenting.
Studies have proven that shared parenting makes healthier, happier children.
I was not charged. She went to the court system and used a domestic violence form to gain the custody right away so that she could have the child. Then I think within 7 days you have a right to go before the court. And once we got there, that was certainly thrown out because none of that occurred. But that was used as a tool to gain a leg up in the custody.
CPR serves parents and children with research, education, advocacy, and support.
Since 2003, CPR has grown steadily through the generous donations of both time and money of strongly committed volunteers.
Now we need your help.
Take time now to support CPR with a financial contribution.
Please give generously. You'll be glad you did.
CPR is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, so your donation is fully tax deductible.
Your contribution will make a big difference. Every amount counts. Thank you for your support.
In my opinion, I think the problem is, number one, that judges have too much power over one person's life. A criminal actually has more say over his own future than a child. I think that a child custody case should be heard in front of a jury. As again I said, a criminal is afforded more judicial equity in society than a child is currently. And the problem is, a custody case is decided as a win-lose situation. One person wins over a child as a piece of property instead of a child being treated as an equitable party in the relationship. If the basic fundamental presumption of joint custody is entered into when you walk into a courtroom, then parents can then fight over a refrigerator rather than a child's life.
Former child support collection agent turned whistleblower and author, Carol Rhodes.
The Child Support Enforcement Agency became something that had nothing to do with children except money, except an excuse to bring in money, to build up the bureaucracy, and the more money they brought in, the more successful the states would be at sucking these federal dollars. It's just whoever gets to them first, and the states are just fighting with each other to get those federal dollars, and the federal government was all too willing to continue to perpetuate this system.
Friend of the Court, Enemy of the Family, the book that exposes corruption in child support.
You're watching CPRTV, a public service of the Center for Parental Responsibility.
Welcome back. We're glad to have you with us. We left off discussing and commenting on the powerful perspective of our national expert, Dr. Stephen Baskerville.
Molly, we've just scratched the surface on what we can learn from Dr. Baskerville. Let's listen to another clip.
Well, a lot of people today claim to be doing what they do for the sake of children. And it sounds very good. It sounds difficult to argue with. But the fact is that traditionally in Western society, including the United States, it's always been assumed that the best interests of children are determined by their parents. Parents decide what is best for their own children, not the government. Unless the parents, of course, have done something to forfeit that right. But the default position for centuries, going deep into the English common law, has been that parents speak for their minor children. And this has been recognized in numerous Supreme Court decisions and federal court decisions. And it's a basically sound principle. What we have done in only the last 30 or 40 years or so is seen a gradual shift away from that principle toward the principle that courts and government officials decide what is best for children. Well, it sounds nice for them to be concerned with what's best for children, but effectively it gives them control over children and marginalizes, or in some sense eliminates, the essential role of parents.
Stanley, what do you think is the most powerful point that Dr. Baskerville just made in that clip we just saw?
Molly, I think the most significant point is that the common law for hundreds of years said that the primary responsibility for children and the primary authority over children was the parents of the child. He was not overstating things when he said that over the last 3 or 4 decades, family courts have basically turned away from the common law and from the constitutional law that says that parents are the primary caregivers of the child to the exclusion of the state. One of the things that you see over and over in U.S. Supreme Court cases in what I refer to as the modern era since the turn of the century in 1900 is that over and over in one case after another, the U.S. Supreme Court has said that the duty of care, custody, control, education, and nurture of the child goes first and foremost to the parents. And there are numerous Supreme Court cases that address specific aspects of those parental rights, but over and over the state was prevented from interfering with the rights of a fit parent by a U.S. constitutional decision from the U.S. Supreme Court that again came between the state actor or state action that wanted to interfere with the rights of a fit parent when it came to caring for their child. That's well established, and the most significant thing that I think Dr. Baskerville just illuminated is that in the past 3 or 4 decades, America's family courts have turned away from that well-established principle of common law, and they're now ready, willing, and able to allow the state to invade the parental rights of a fit parent.
Yes, so many questions that raises. First of all, I think how Dr. Baskerville said we're doing this all for the sake of children, and that yet I have to wonder, how can it possibly be for the best interest of the children, for the sake of the children, to remove and limit their time with their father to 4 days a month? How can that possibly be in the best interest of children?
Well, I want to begin by saying that in a Supreme Court case called Troxel versus Granville, the U.S. Supreme Court acknowledged that there are real problems with the so-called best interest of the child standard. It is, in my opinion, it's unconstitutionally vague, but it is used in family courts all over the country as legal leverage or authority for a family court judge to invade the rights of a fit parent. But when you really take a close look at best interest of the child, Molly, the best interest of the child is not at all a legal standard at all. It's a goal to be achieved by the parents of the child. And yet the courts use it instead of an objective that they respect the rights of a fit parent or both fit parents to decide on the best interest of the child and to do whatever is appropriate in the opinion of the parents, first and foremost, without any state interference from a state court or a family court judge. Instead of respecting that zone of privacy around the parent-child relationship of each parent to the child, the family courts are now very willing, and on a daily basis in courts all over the country, they are very willing to ignore that zone of privacy and the constitutional protections for that zone of privacy, and on no evidence or legally insufficient evidence, they are willing to issue orders that invade the parent-child relationship of one or both parents, and they take away the freedom of that parent to parent the child without interference from government.
Stanley, anytime a judge invades parental rights, that's really an awesome power.
It truly is, Molly, and we as citizens give our state courts through the Constitution that power. That's not, there's nothing inherently wrong in that. It's when that power is exercised by state judges without lawful authority. And those have to go hand in hand. It's like hand in glove. The exercise of power without lawful authority is unlawful and in most cases unconstitutional. So what we're dealing with here as we wrap this up is we're talking about the most important relationships perhaps, or at least arguably, the most important relationship in our society. Those are accorded the most sacred of rights and protections, and we call those fundamental rights in the law. Parental rights are fundamental. Over and over, the U.S. Supreme Court has characterized them as basic civil rights, fundamental, essential. Nobody would dispute that what comes from the parent-child relationship is the foundation of our society, and it's what passes our societal values on from generation to generation. I personally think there's no more important relationship in law, and it's why our Constitution gives that relationship as much protection as it does.
Stanley, our viewers continue to hear how parental rights are protected by the Constitution. Can you help our viewers understand where in the Constitution exactly are these rights listed out?
Well, you don't see the specific rights specifically stated in the Constitution. But under our system of government, which has checks and balances between the various branches of government, the legislative branch, the judicial branch, and the executive branch, the judicial branch is controlled by constitutional provisions as construed by the U.S. Supreme Court. Under the U.S. Constitution's Supremacy Clause, the Constitution is the highest law of the land, and the Constitution as construed by the U.S. Supreme Court is also the highest law of the land, and it is binding on all judges, including family court judges. So while you don't see a specific line-by-line list of parental rights, when you look at the case law over the last 100 years, you can see very clearly in case after case they enumerate or specify what those parental rights are and how they're protected from unwarranted state interference.
So no matter what the state law says, the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution should prevail.
The U.S. Constitution must prevail if our republic is to survive. You're watching CPRTV, a public service of the Center for Parental Responsibility. We'll be right back.
I think it's quite fair to question the amount of money that's changing hands in the family court system and how that affects the decisions that officials in the system make.
They've done a lot of damage to this community. And at the time, I thought, well, yeah, half the people who've been through here don't like us because they didn't get what they wanted. And I realize now, no, that's not the problem. The problem is you were disrespecting people and they knew it.
CPR serves parents and children with research, education, advocacy, and support.
Since 2003, CPR has grown steadily through the generous donations of both time and money of strongly committed volunteers.
Now we need your help.
Take time now to support CPR with a financial contribution.
Please give generously. You'll be glad you did.
CPR is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, so your donation is fully tax deductible.
Your contribution will make a big difference. Every amount counts. Thank you for your support.
Are you embroiled in a divorce or custody battle? Have your children been taken away? Have you been unjustly accused of domestic violence or child abuse? Have you been ordered to pay extortionate sums in child support? Have you been ordered to pay attorneys you never hired? Have you been treated like a criminal, though you did nothing wrong, and have not been charged with any crime? If so, you are not alone. Millions of Americans have been through the same ordeal in these rapacious courts. Their children are taken away. They are accused of despicable crimes without any evidence. Their savings and earnings are looted. They are jailed without trial. Family courts are not simply unfair or inefficient or biased. Family courts are crooked. They are violating the law and the Constitution. Your response may be to hire an aggressive lawyer. This will do you little good. Any lawyer you hire is likely to be in collusion with the opposing lawyer and the judge. My name is Stephen Baskerville. I am not a lawyer, and I am not trying to sell you legal advice. I am a political science professor and author of a new book. Taken into Custody, The War Against Fathers, Marriage, and the Family will explain precisely why your children have been taken away. It will explain why everything else you have may be taken away. It will explain why you too could end up in jail without having done anything wrong. Taken into Custody explains the legal underworld of family law, a world some believe is little more and nothing less than a system of organized crime. Never before in human history has any government created a machinery whose primary purpose is to take children away from their parents. The Nazis and the communists both did it, but it was not their principal aim. In America, we have created a massive multi-billion-dollar government machine that exists for no other purpose. If you have been through family court, you need this book.
You're watching CPRTV.
Well, Molly, that's all we have time for. Thanks for joining us on CPR Television, a program for the family law reform community. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. Remember, success depends upon your involvement. Please contact CPR today to learn how you can make a difference. Thanks for watching.
What we have just shown you exposes them for what they really are: lying, dirty, shrewd, godless, determined, and international criminal conspiracy.